Good morning. It is Wednesday, April 15th. I'm JJ Hastings, and these are the news stories you need to know to start your day. Let's jump right in. Now, in our first story, following the collapse of negotiations led by Vice President J.D. Vance this past weekend, the U.S. has moved to a stance of total economic and military pressure in the war on Iran. Multiple sources, including the Washington Post, reporting this morning that the Pentagon is sending 10,000 additional troops to the Middle East to enforce a maritime blockade of Iranian ports. This surge includes 6,000 additional sailors and Marines currently making an unusual transit around the Horn of Africa in the USS George H.W. Bush, and 4,200 personnel with a Boxer amphibious ready group arriving from Hawaii. These forces join the U.S. Abraham Lincoln and USS Gerald R. Ford, already in theater there in the Strait of Hormuz, as I've shared in prior updates. The failure of Vance's weekend talks shifted the strategy from diplomacy to a squeeze tactic. By positioning 3 carrier groups and planning for potential ground operations or the seizure of Iranian nuclear material, the administration is preparing for the very real possibility that the April 22nd ceasefire expiration leads to a full-scale ground invasion. As the U.S. prepares to surge those 10,000 more troops into the Middle East, NBC News releasing a grim update on the human cost of the conflict. According to Iran's forensic chief, more than 3,000 people have been killed within Iran since the U.S. and Israeli strikes began on February 28th. This devastation extends across the region, reporting 2,100 killed in Lebanon, 32 killed in the Gulf states, only 23 killed in Israel, 15 U.S. service members lost, including 13 killed in combat, and 2 who died of non-combat causes. Additionally, according to the UN, in Palestine, since October 7th, 2023, the death toll has reached 72,344 people. More than 172,200 people have been brutally injured. And despite a fragile ceasefire that was technically implemented on October 10th of 2025, over 716 additional Palestinians have been killed by ongoing shelling and gunfire in just the last 6 months. Now, these numbers being reported as high as over 200,000 deaths in the Palestinian region since the start of that conflict. So as you can see, reporting on this number varying widely, but a huge human toll in Palestine since the start of this conflict. Additionally, at least 262 journalists and media workers have been killed since the start of the war, 245 of whom who have been killed in Palestine alone, per the International Federation of Journalists. These numbers represent a catastrophic escalation in over just 6 weeks of fighting. This is no longer a surgical operation. The death toll in Lebanon and Iran suggests a massive humanitarian crisis is unfolding, with more than 1 million Lebanese alone displaced in this crisis. For the administration, the 15 American lives lost and the thousands of foreign casualties create a narrow political window. They must achieve a quick and brutal conclusion, as the president has promised, or face an increasingly outraged global and domestic public as these numbers continue to climb. In a disturbing pivot to domestic news, the Associated Press describing a stunning reversal, the Justice Department now actively working to erase the legal record of the January 6th Capitol attack. U.S. Attorney and former TV show star Jeanine Pirro has petitioned the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals to vacate the seditious conspiracy convictions of high-level extremist hate group leaders, including Oath Keeper founder Stuart Rhodes and Proud Boy leaders Enrique Tarrio and Ethan Nordine. Now, this goes far beyond the president's previous commutations and pardons, the DOJ now moving to permanently dismiss the indictments entirely. While defense attorneys told AP this prevents, quote, physical confrontations from being treated as treason, This move represents a deliberate effort by the administration to downplay the violence of a mob that left more than 100 police officers critically wounded. Former Officer Michael Fanone, who suffered a heart attack after being tased with a stun gun by an attacker during the riot, told the AP that these men were traitors who planned and carried out a literal insurrection. This is a calculated attempt to rewrite the history of the January 6th attacks. By abandoning these seditious conspiracy convictions, the most serious charges leveled against those who plotted to stop the peaceful transfer of power, this administration is legally normalizing a violent attempt to unseat the government. It signals a new era of prosecutorial discretion where the orchestrators of a domestic attack on the heart of our democracy are no longer held accountable, fundamentally altering the precedent for future political violence. Now, Reuters reporting that Senate Democrats, led by Chuck Schumer, are now filing 10 separate war powers resolutions with plans to bring one to the floor every single day of the week. Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois, a combat veteran, is expected to introduce the next resolution today, with a companion vote in the House as soon as Thursday. Democrats are leveraging the fact that oil and natural gas disruptions have caused a massive run-up in the cost of gasoline and agricultural fertilizers. While the U.S. Constitution mandates that only Congress can declare war, Reuters notes that Republican leaders, including John Thune, are blocking these resolutions. Thune told reporters the military objective in Iran is clear and extraordinarily successful, arguing that the president's status and commander-in-chief allows for these limited operations without a formal declaration. This is a high-stakes race against the calendar. With the November midterms less than 7 months away, Republican insiders are reportedly unsettled by the inflationary upswing. The administration is betting that the blockade will end the war very soon, allowing gas prices to return to pre-war levels just in time for the elections, perhaps the way we're still waiting for the cost of consumer goods to return to pre-COVID levels. Meanwhile, Democrats are betting that the long list of high consumer prices will eventually force Republicans to break rank and rein in the president's war powers. And then in my final story this morning, returning to Turkey, yesterday reporting a rare school shooting happened there. Well, tragedy struck again today. Multiple sources reporting that an 8th grade student entered a school in the second such incident in Turkey in 48 hours. The 13-year-old reportedly carried 5 weapons and 7 magazines, believed to belong to his father, a former police officer, and opened fire indiscriminately in 2 fifth-grade classrooms where children aged 10 to 11 were learning. 4 people were killed, and several others are in critical condition. Now, as I reported yesterday, in Turkey, school shootings are historically very rare. So 2 mass casualty events in just 2 days represent some sort of massive shift in public safety. This is expected to spark an immediate and intense investigation by the justice minister there into the security of service weapons and the mental health of students in the region. That's my updates for you this morning. I will be back this afternoon with any further breaking news you need to know. Please below tell me what comments you have. And engaging in the content, hitting the buttons, always helps a small channel like mine to stay in the algorithm. As always, I'm JJ Hastings, and I'll see you in the next one.